about the future of Africa, talking about the Africa that we want. There is an Africa that we have, but there is also the Africa that we want. And one could ask, why are we talking about the Africa that we want? There is a reason why. It's because there is something terribly wrong with the Africa that we have. So we are raising questions, saying, what kind of Africa we want. Today we're going to be with our guest, Umama Ya Ashantewa, as she will be sharing with us her journey, her experiences, and also a bit of history. And we're going to engage talking about different questions pertaining to Africa, the present Africa, the past Africa, the present, and also looking into the future. You want to be here. You want to be here and engaging into this conversation. And right here, I'm jamming to Bob Marley saying, Africa Unite. And it's very interesting for us to think and talk about the unification of Africa. Our guest is in the house. The guest is here already. So let me just welcome. Now we can take it from there. Awesome. Thank you, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Yes. I'm listening to the music of the legend Bob Marley here, talking about Africa Unite. How prophetic the message. And to those of you, yes. How are you, Mamaya?
Greetings, Jambo Africa, Sanbonani. Africa.
Yes, that greetings goes out to everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm very excited about the topic that we're going to be talking about. Knowing who you are and the work that you do, it's very interesting for us to be able to learn a lot from a person like you who's got experience and is also doing something in the community to ensure that we basically we're going in the right direction as Africa and everyone. Yes, to those of you who do not know Mama Ya Ashantewa, she's the founder and the director at the Institute of Africology, and she's a Pan-Africanist and Africologist, and she's a national social cohesion advocate. You know, bringing Africans together, bringing everyone together. So we are very humbled for your presence, though we're not together, but on live. And yes, welcome once again, Mamaya. Thank you very much for joining us.
We give thanks and we say thankfulness to all of you who are coming in. We hope that this time together would be a meaningful time, and that surely we would learn and understand and appreciate what we're about as Africans, for Africans at home and abroad.
Thank you very much. Now, Africa, I mean, we are all over the place, all over the world. There are Africans here at home in Africa, some, I mean, in America, all over the world, all over the globe. But there is one thing that is uniting everyone, especially of late. There is an anthem that is lingering in many people's ears, and that is Black Lives Matters. And I was just saying to some viewers, some of our friends on Facebook, that there is a reason why this song is being sung, and we all ought to join in chorus and sing the same song, because it's not only African Americans who are saying, I cannot breathe. It's not only people on the individual level who are saying, I cannot breathe. But Africa, if I may looking at it, knowing Africa that I was born and being raised and grown in, Africa as a whole cannot breathe, Mamaya. Would you agree with that?
Well, Black Africans have not been breathing naturally for the last 500 years. So this call and this shout And I just want us to raise our spirits to those who have passed in the ancestral world in such a tragic way. We pray that their spirits will not have to roam asking for questions, because those of us still living would have done something to restore their peacefulness in the land of the ancestors.
Yes.
And
And
so no, Black Africa has not been breeding for 500 years. So that sound of the ka being taken from us forcefully continue to resonate even to this day. So yes, I am a part of that, but I'm a part of the stopping of us not breathing naturally.
thank you for that. And that is very true, because there is something that we have to do something about the situation, and not only looking at what is happening and say, let it be, you know.
Yes.
So thank you for that, Mumaya. We've got, I'm excited about the question that we're going to talk about, especially one that we're going to begin with. It's actually from your very name, Mumaya. Would you tell us about your name, the origin of that name?
Yes, I am ordained and pleased and humbled and honored to be given the name of the great Nanaya Santiwa, the Asante of the Ashanti Kingdom, and who at the time of 1814, which she was born, was able to fight the resistance war against the British to protect the golden stool of the Asante nation. So this is whose footsteps I walk in, and in whose spirit I continually, humble myself for, because when she said to the men, how can you allow the British to take our totem? How can you allow the British to take our soul? And she says, if the men are tired, we are not tired. And she brought her regiment and her contingent and went after the British. And because of that, it is called the Nanaya Santiwa War, because the golden stool still remains as a very symbolic essence of the people of Africa, and not just the Ashanti. It is a resistance war, because I know that they say it's the war of rebellion. She was not rebelling, she was resisting. So we rewrite it to say it is the war of resistance, because that's also another thing we have to do. We have to rewrite those words in our history.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. And
so Nanaya Santiwa, the elder, she made her transition from this earth to 1921. And has still been celebrated. So, again, there are many Nanaya Santiwas because they thought they could bury her, but she grew, she multiplied.
Yes, yes. So the legacy that she have left behind still continues even today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very interesting. And as you say that they say that it was a rebellion, she was rebelling, it was a rebellion war. And it gets to show us that when the history is not written by us, it will be told anyhow.
Absolutely. And part of the I cannot breathe is that we don't have a history of telling our children that we resisted. So it seems like when we start resisting, it's a new phenomena. But my brother, we never stop resisting. And so it is in that spirit that I felt that we should start with understanding that as Nanaya and many of the great heroines of her kind, it was always about resisting, because the rebellion was as a result of the incarceration and the penal system that we rebelled against. But she was not a rebel. She was a fighter and a resistance fighter.
True that. She was a warrior. She was a warrior,
yes,
and
absolutely.
Of her. And there is a lot that we can learn from her, because when we talk about rebelling, we'll come to it when we talk about the whole mindset of saying victim mentality. We'll come to that as we go along in our conversation. But definitely, what do you think that young women and women of this generation can be able to learn from her going forward?
Well, there are five things I always say about the characteristics of Mama Nanaya was one, she was not afraid because for the African woman, when you take up leadership, you cannot fear anyone, anything, or any moment. You must be ready. She was also very decisive that there was something worth fighting for and was not going to be stopped, because that's the other thing, you know, we need to be rebels with cause, and she was one of the first women rebel with a cause. And in her rebelliousness, her cause was protecting the soul and the symbology of the African people. The third one for me is about courage, because courage is not something that you get up in the morning and you shout about. Courage is in your actions, where people realize that you cannot be defined by their wanting you to act, but you will define how you act to a circumstances or to an event. And the fourth one was her understanding that it was for collectiveness. So as women today, you know, everybody's in an individual thing. You can't fight a rebellion on an individual basis. You have to collect as you come along. You have to collect. And so learning how to work with other women of strength, learning how to work with other women of integrity and purpose is an important one. And the last one that I say, that I always remind people, was you can't get too tired, you know. And she asked the men, why are you tired? And so it's so easy, you know, as in this time and in this period and in this moment where people like to be tired. It's important that we don't get tired, because by being tired, you know, it means that we don't have the energy. So she was showing the men at the time that we have the energy for this. We need to have the energy to fulfill that which we have agreed on with our own spirit, with the ancestral spirit. But for those who we must justify, we must give them justice as they have laid down their lives for us. And I think that is what are some of the 5 things that you can learn from Nanaya Asantewaa.
Wow, powerful lessons indeed. And looking at it, I believe it's not only women and the young women who can learn from this, but it's for every African to say that we need that courage. Yes. And we need to know that we have got something to fight for, and to fight for something. Yes. And something that we all ought to fight for right now is the African agenda, which I believe we'll come to in just a bit. But also talking about the collectiveness, yes, to say that I am not alone. I am not alone, and there are others also who are of the same mind to be able to do that. Okay, thank you very much. Now, could you now tell us a little bit about what is Africology? What is Africology as a study, and also you will tell us a little bit more about the Institute of Africology and what you do and how.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for showing interest, and thank you for giving me this platform. I'm really humbled by it. So there was a discourse in the 1990s in Black America, the Black people of America were discussing, we have been having African studies, we've been having Black studies. And so Van Horn, one of the great professors from Cornell, asked the question, so how do we epistemologize? How do we make it a scientific approach to how we study ourselves? And so with Malifa Asante himself, they came with Africology with a C. And later on in 1998, Professor Danny Nabuderi came with, let us reconnect that K. And so there was a terminology that was now turned around in Africa called Africology. And basically what the great late Drake Coker and Dr. Nabuderi did was to concretize the concept of Africology. And these were both sons of the soil that was agreeing with the sons of the Africa extended in America that we needed to have our own epistemology and our own study. And so just in terms of the terminology, we began to think of it as a field of study. So it was Africa in it. Africology was in its totality. So whatever you study, you had to have a prism of Africology. And one of the things that I want to just quote from Asante. Asante says, Africology is the Afrocentric study of an African phenomena. This is in keeping with the belief that definitions should be meaningful, it should establish boundaries, and it should have substance. If one cannot define the name of the field and give it meaning, then that field does not exist. I do not try to define Africana studies, for example, because I do not know what it means in practical terms, says Asante. So
Yes.
in that way, he says, to say it is an Afrocentric study means that it is not European study. It is not an Arab study. It is not a Christian study. The phenomena that we speak about is an African study, which clarifies where we are coming from in our approach to the phenomena. And to be Afrocentric is to seek African agency in every situation, analysis, or critique. In closing, he says, Africology is a study of an African phenomena, which means that it is not limited to the United States, Brazil, or Africa. In fact, it opens the door to the global curiosity of Africa for Africans and Africans within themselves.
Wow. So that is, if I would reiterate it in lay terms, it's basically Africa. We're studying Africa, like studying ourselves, our history, our very being, who we are, and basically incorporating that Africanness in everything that we do. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
Correct.
Wow.
But this knowledge, my brother, it is only important and relevant if it is meeting the needs of the masses of Africans. And by that, we mean that it must bring about, when people have gotten knowledge, when they find out that these are African great books that have been written, not just
Yes.
read these books, but make these books and what's in them relevant to bring about a transformation. And that is the key word. Africans, when they get knowledge, that information must decrease the plight of the African masses.
True that. So the knowledge need to benefit Africans. Thank you very much. So that is now the Africology as a study. Now there is the Institute of Africology, which you lead, ma'am. And
Yes.
what are the things that what do you do in the Institute at the Institute of Africology?
Yeah.
And tell us more about it.
So apart from being a Afrocentric indigenous research entity, our approach in Africology is looking at Africology and the African heritage. It is looking at the central role of language. It is looking at Africology as a universal emancipator. It is also creating an institute and a body of knowledge that African people can have access to. So we are a conduit. We are the people that provide the African-centered education. And by that, we encourage indigenous learning. And so that is in just what the Institute aims and is about for the last 25 years. But our mission lies in our objectives. One, to encourage African-centered studies, to encourage and to support African-centered lecturers, to promote and to bring to light African-centered research, and most importantly, to continuously be in a spirit of African-centered fact-finding. The second one is to ensure African-centered education that empowers the community, right? So we're not just a people who sing and dance. We're not just a people who like doing drama. We're a people who study and write. We're a people who have opinions and thoughts, right? The last of that, of the Africology work that we are doing is to make African specific information and resources available to everyone, Africa at home and abroad.
Awesome, awesome. Now that is what Africology, the Institute of Africology is all about. I tell you, I have been at the museum, Pansy Museum. That is where we met, and there is a lot to learn. There is a lot to learn. The history. There's a lot. Basically, I would like to encourage anyone who's listening, who's watching right now, you should get in touch with the Institute of Africology. Get yourself centered and fed the African knowledge that we're all supposed to be consuming.
And I just want to, brother, I just want to clarify when I talk about African-centered education, what I'm saying is that in its African-centeredness is the placement of all African people and students at the center of human process. We are this is based on the belief that all humans have their physical, social, and intellectual origins. In that, we are saying that Africans produce knowledge, we produce information, and we are central to that. And I just wanted to close because, always with an institution like ours, we always have to answer what is the purpose of our institution. And I just want to clarify that purpose. Our purpose is to unify Africans at home and abroad, and to bring under one banner that Africa Unite you started with, our Africanness. We want to educate and remind Africans of their rich stories, not just the stories of slavery and the stories of being conquered, but the stories that we know that is worthful of giving us dignity. Another purpose of Africology is to focus on making Africans self-reliant and self-sufficient, my brother. The idea that we are not encouraging self-sufficiency becomes a big problem. Then we also say that the purpose that we serve is to focus on removing the mental shackles that keep us from reaching our full potential. Our totem guide is liberate the African mind, affirm the African greatness. And lastly, the purpose of Africology and the reason why we exist is to assist in the empowerment of the African man, woman, child, the African old woman to gain their rightful divine state of mind, their rightful divine dignity to be a part of the human process of this world. And that is what we know our purpose to be, nothing else.
Awesome. I'm really, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking everyone should know about this institute and be able to be part of it. Liberating African mind and affirming African greatness. How powerful. Now, as we're going now, we're getting deeper into this conversation, and I'm enjoying it and learning a lot. And to everyone who's following this conversation, please show some love to Mamaya, everyone.
Give thanks.
Yes. I see also my son also have just joined there.
Oh, wonderful, yes.
Exciting. Get around, Alex. Let's get some knowledge here. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then now, the question that we're asking here, we're talking about the Africa that we want. But someone, there is some love there. Thank you very much. Someone may ask, why would we ask for another Africa? Why would we ask for another different Africa than what? What is so terribly wrong with the Africa that we have? What is it? Mamaya, could you help us? Explain on the question, on the problems that are facing Africa, things that need change and immediate change. The rest will perish, because I believe that is crucial. It is crucial or something to be done, and you can share. If you could share some light on that before we dive in.
Absolutely. Alexia, I see your loving dad. I see my daughter is also there, fruitful thinking. I see my king is also there. So yeah, the family is here. It means that we're starting, because we don't start with family when we're not doing the work, you know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so what's wrong with Africa? We have many things. What is wrong is that for 1,000 years we have been invaded by everything else. And in that invasion, we start with the dumbing of our spiritual selves, the dumbing of our agricultural, you know, the way we used to honor the land, the destruction of African-centered leadership, the education of the African child. So these are some of the many things that's wrong with where we are. We don't have enough institutions that will give us, you know, more protection that the African child can learn and be comfortable in learning about themselves. But one key one is African leadership, because you know, we like to talk about African leadership, but let me tell you, the African leaders are from us. The African leaders come from our communities. And when they become, you know, the light bulb, and when they become a shining star, they are gobbled up and taken away and brought out of the system to train, to become African leaders. And they're doing this in Europe, they're doing this in America, they're doing it every place else but in their country. So when they come back after 5 or 10 years, my brother, they never even learned how to practice that leadership that they were given. So let's start with that. But when you have been told for 1,000 years that you are a slave, that you never had any systems, your libraries got burnt, your sacred sages got killed, your kings were castrated, and your queens were raped and vilified and totally taken apart. Now, when you have all of that, remember, if you're learning something for 1,000 years, when you are in this space for 500 years and all you have learned is other people's things, you know, John, when you have learned everybody else's, you have nothing of yourself that you've learned. So the Africa that we have at this moment does not belong to us. The system that we have at this moment does not belong to us. In fact, if you and I were truly in our African spaces, I would have had an emissary who was speaking my language, and that emissary will be speaking to your emissary in your language. But because we're speaking to the global world and we want to include them, we're speaking the language of a conquered, we're speaking a conqueror's language. So we've had to accept that we're gonna use that, but in using that, it doesn't mean that our language does not get the elevation that it deserves and the value that it must have. So those are some of the things that is wrong, and that is what we want to fix. We want to fix the language. We want to fix the way we eat. We want to fix what we wear. We want to fix the way we converse with each other. We want to fix the information that is given. The knowledge, because all sides of the coin, white, Indian, Chinese, they've all been done in by the European way of thinking of history. So everyone is at a back foot in this way because they have learned a history that tells them that the black man, the African, was nowhere in that 1,000 years. All they were slaves, was always at the back foot. So at this point, hi Loazi, my beautiful Loazi is joining us. At this point, we have to fix, and this is why we say Africology in its totality, because we have to fix so many elements of who we are, and even how we do business as African people.
There's a lot, and I see Jocelyn also just join us. Thank you for joining, everyone. And Mama, you have touched on a lot of things. But also when we look at Africa, Mama, and one of the things that has been of a great concern to me is the way we are divided. The way we are divided.
Yeah.
I was born in Rwanda and being of Burundian descent, and been to Tanzania, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. Now here in South Africa. But there is one thing that keeps me amazed is how we have accepted this divide that has been put amongst us. And in my view, and I believe it weakens Africa. It weakens Africa because when it comes to the point when we talk economics, when we talk business, you cannot take a heavyweight champion in boxing, for instance. Let's use that as an example, and put that heavyweight champion together with the lightweight champion, the lightweight boxer. It means that the lightweight is there in the ring, but ready to commit suicide because he's not a match, So they understand. Our previous colonizers understood that because united, we are either equal with them or even greater. Yeah. And I believe the latter. That we are actually, Africa is actually greater than all these other countries and continents that we call them. But this energy, this force has not been brought together. And as a result, we remain a conquered nation. However we play the card.
Yeah. Yeah, there are people, I like the way you put that across. People used to say Africa the sleeping giant.
Yes.
And they never said the sleeping dwarf. So it's obvious that they know there's a giant who has been stunned. That teaser gun that they're using on our black men.
Yes.
When they want to subdue them, that is what they did to us. They subdued us because they know that we are giants. And the biggest fear for Europe, for China, for Asia is that when this giant who is coming out of her slumber starts moving in the strength of a giant, then there's two things you have to do. You have to learn how to live with the giant or get out of the way of the giant. And so one of the principles in our response to this challenge, the first principle is to deal with the prevailing miseducation of African history. Because until our children, if our children do not know that there was a Berlin conference where constipated white men sat together with their bread and fromage, cheese and bread, and their bottle of wine, they sat there and they cut up Africa. And they said, you will get this part, no concern. Because remember, they thought we were the savages according to their missionaries. So African children must be told very strongly that this experiment of borders, it is an experiment that has brought us nothing but turmoil, that has brought us nothing but disunity, that has brought us nothing but Africans always paranoid of each other because we do not understand the history of these borders. The other part of this is the declining understanding. My brother, when they say a sleeping giant, they have spent 1,000 years devaluing our systems, devaluing our way we solve problems, devaluing our way we traded with each other, because we came from a place of barter and trade. We were never people that said, oh, you needed a credit card and you spend money that you don't have. We were a people that understood that you traded accordingly to your purpose and your needs. So those are the things that was devalued, So my brother, what I want to go back to in terms of your question is, why are we not unified? We're a part of a border experiment. And because our leaders were feted in Paris, in London, in New York, in Washington, in Beijing, they were feted and closed in to think that these are the things that Africans will want. The leaders have decided to go the route of a capitalist system that will never work in Africa. Capitalist system will never work because we see it now in COVID. You know, those who used to get tenders, they can't function because you don't have a tender to become a capitalist. You know, your credit card means nothing anymore because you can't buy the things you want. So we know now that, you know, time has a way of revealing the truth. And the African proverb says, truth thrown in the air must come back to earth. So we know that the truth that was taken away from us and was taken from us, it has been thrown up and it's coming back to earth. So that is my thinking around the whole thing of African unity. We can only get there, my brother, until we spend more time like you are doing on many, many, many more media outlets talking about the miseducation and the misrepresentation of not just African history, but African systems.
Yes. And wow, talking about this is very important indeed, as you're saying. And we have been miseducated. I was just talking to some other young people that it's very, very saddening to see how one can go through the whole, educational system from grade 1, high school, varsity, without reading even a book on African history. Without even reading one book written by an African. So the mind, and what I'm still saying is, I'm glad that there are such institution as Africology, because we need to consume our own information, and that's why we have that's how used to look at Africa is not the African lenses. And
absolutely.
Very, very interesting. So we have addressed a lot of things, and with everything going on in the world, the question is still the same. Black lives matters. Black lives matters. And we are still saying as Africans, we cannot breathe. We cannot breathe economically. We cannot breathe educationally. Intellectually, that is. We cannot breathe. Spiritually, even. We cannot breathe, because we are boxed into countries. We're not allowed. Can you imagine an African person being called a foreigner in Africa? It's very sad. It's very sad.
Yes, and one of the things that I say to young people when people ask you, so who is an African? I said, well, the fact that you're a fish and you come from the sea and you don't know that you are from the sea, asking that question makes me very suspecting, because, we do know that the word African was given to us. We accept that and we're working with the terminology until we can move to the real terminology. But in this moment, the idea that an African has to remind another African, when I lived in Denmark and I've lived in France and many other these European countries, I never asked who a European was. They were too proud to tell me, there we are the European Union. We are the only people who have to justify our existence in our own skin, our existence in our own place, because everybody else has denied us the right to be who we want to be.
Yes.
By the way, to be who we are divinely being, African people.
And that is well put. Thinking about all this, really, it is kind of said, and I think that divide need to be removed, at least in our minds, to say that yes, I am in Tanzania. Yes, I am in Gabon. Yes, I'm in Tunisia, but I am an African face. Yes. Before I call myself a Burundian, before I call myself, and we have learned to copy everything. We have learned to copy and paste educational system, judicial system, economical system, and everything, spiritual systems even. But we have forgot this one thing called unity. We've forgotten this one thing called unity, because an American can travel anywhere in America with just an ID or a social security number. Everyone will know who he is.
Yes.
From New York to West Virginia, to Mississippi, you name it. Yes. No one asks for a visa. No one asks for a passport. Now, can you imagine what will happen if these borders will just vanish and Africans can trade amongst themselves? I was sharing with one young person that I was talking to earlier this week, saying that if we would move the borders, moving the borders, even if we can send everyone home where they come from, the Chinese can go home, the Americans and the French can go home, and we'll do business. We'll do business, but on our own terms. On our own terms, and then Africa can be the great Africa that it is. But I believe you have a lot of us onto the solutions. This is me excited about this whole thing.
Yeah. So you know, I want to quote this thing because it's important for those who are still new to this whole idea of African-centered knowledge, and I found it very important. Right? Eurocentric knowledge is not produced just for its own sake. Its purpose throughout the ages has been to enable them to know the natives in order to take control of their territories, including human and material resources for their benefit. And such control of knowledge was used to exploit the non-European people and to colonize them both mentally and geostrategically. I am quoting that, my brother, because it's important that we understand that in order for us to learn how to unify and dismantle the borders, we are going to have to understand what the knowledge that we are now giving value to, what is its purpose. So when people have learned the African history, African mathematics, African-centered languages, all of that, when we have learned that, to what good is it for? And the only good is to stand in defense of our value. Because for a very long time, we have no value put on our land. We don't know the value of our knowledge. We don't know the value of our spirituality. We don't know the value, my brother, of our the essence of the skin, the value of it. And because we have not tightened down the value system, because all they have over us is that they put a value to their economic systems, they put a value to their materials, their resources. They take a diamond out of Africa that we play with. The Ashanti kings, they wear their gold, and it's just like, it's just one of those things. They take that gold and they take it to London and they put it in a box and they say this piece of gold is worth this amount, and if we get 1,000 of this is what our shares means. So you see, they have found a system of value. And if in our minds we are not ready to put value to our presence, we built the Western world. We built it. In fact, if they leave us now and they go wherever they go, they cannot get rid of us, because in the sickness of slavery, in the sickness of apartheid, in the sickness of the Hutu Tutsis, experiment that they've done, they forget that we were building these systems. They forgot that we were in charge when they were busily, you know, wasting themselves away because of the heat. So we know that this demeanor and this misunderstanding that they built the Western world or they built Africa, even with what's here, we built it. We have the knowledge of the pyramids. We have the knowledge of the roads that they even dare to put the asphalt on. We have the knowledge of Timbuktu. That's why they came to us. We have the knowledge of building the pyramids in such a way. That's why they sent their Greeks, Pythagoras, and all of them to come. That's why they sent them to us. When they wanted to get by their rum, they went to the plantations of the Caribbean because they knew that Africans had it in them to source those things. So we need to understand the value proposition that we have when we come to the table. And that is where our leaders have failed us, because they have forgotten that it is not us that need them, it is them that need us.
So it has been turned around in a wrong direction. Yes. Absolutely. Because right now we hear our dear politicians, and everyone who's elected, they say that one of the things they promise us that they will get investors to come into our country, investors this, investors that, and we have seen this card is being played by China. Greatly of late, to say that they are coming as investors and they're giving money. They just giving money. Remember how many $80 billion were given to our African leaders to say that's for development purposes. But we all know that it is a trap. It is a trap. And I love what you say there, that we need to see and know, recognize our value. In a business, if you are on the market and you have a product that you do not know the value, you will be ripped off.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's what the investment is about. We don't know the value of and the purpose of our land. So we can say to someone, no, it's okay, come and take this land. You know, because at the time, we didn't understand that these people are putting a value to this thing. This thing that was given to us by our ancestors, the land was not to be sold. We knew that. You cannot sell land. You can't tell another human being that they must buy it. So we did not get it in our minds that here are people who put a value on everything, because at the center of their bargaining, there is no divinity. That's the one thing that separates us. We believe that we must respond to a greater source than ourselves. And so when we think about our actions, we think about Ma'at. What have we done? What have we done as a people that will, when we go over to the other side, that we will have to answer to? And so that is also one of the things that they have used in the name of religion to mess with our psyche around spirituality.
To basically take advantage of our Ubuntu and our hospitality.
Absolutely.
To say that you know, and there is a document that I have I read about this the Belgian king Leopold II talking to the missionaries and the priests and teaching them that people of Congo, they're not strange to the idea of God, for they knew Nzambe. And he was telling them that if anything, they're supposed to suppress them by telling them that wealth is useless. And they should not focus on wealth, because should they focus on wealth, then they'll be able to revolt against Belgium, and they will not be able to do anything. So we've been tricked, and we have bought the land. And I'm glad we're having this conversation with you guys who are watching right now. You know, we need. Yes, I see Ray has joined, and also see Norian Ken. I'm getting it right. Yes, thank you for joining us. Now it's very important for us to understand and know that we've been tricked to accept a plan that does not serve us. And if I was to go a step further and the question even democracy, if we were to question democracy, something that is instilled into us from the time we are in primary school, that democracy is the only way to go. But if I were to say that democracy actually leaves us vulnerable, it leaves us vulnerable to manipulation. You know, it leaves us vulnerable to manipulation of, say, there are two parties or more than one parties. So when an American comes to strike a deal, it means that he has got option. He just works with whoever is willing, you know.
Yep.
If I want power and someone else is not, they come and say, no, we're going to give you money for weapons to be able to take him down, and then you get everything that you want. So we are being used against one another. And because the orange is wrong, and the value is wrong. So there is a lot of things that we need to correct, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
I'm happy about that trickery, and some people have even, African people have even perfected the trickery, you know, because again, remember, we have learned very bad habits. I won't even talk about patriarchy today, because even the bad habits that we have learned where women are not at the center of leadership. In Africology, we say no nation can rise higher than the status of its woman. We also say that women, we never understood this thing in Africa of you're above us or you're below us. You know, because we knew that women were so central to the kingmakers. Women were central to making sure that the community had no hunger. You know, the granary was kept to the grandmother because we knew that the grandmother was respected. You couldn't go and steal the grains there. You know, so we had these systems, and so Black Africans, and because I'm in South Africa, I have to say that we have learned how to become tricksters. And we have augmented and embedded our trickery by becoming the spokespersons of democracy. We've become the spokespersons of European value systems. We have become the spokesperson, you know, of everything but what is of us. So even our people, when we try to show them the right, what will we do? We'll kill them. We'll arrange to make sure that they are sabotaged. We'll arrange to make sure that they are cut out of the system, you know, so that they don't upset the apple cart, you know, because why should we have, Brother Jean and Ashanti were talking about trickery. We don't want people to know that our people have been tricked, you know. So that essence of a trickster is what, unfortunately, a lot of our young people are learning, that is called leadership. You know, how to be a good trickster. You know,
or what we can call it straight and say sell out, because they are selling the whole country, you know.
That's one of the personalities. So remember, because of 500 years, we have had to choose personalities to survive. And those who choose personalities that are easier, they go up in the strata. Those who choose personality that says, okay, I need to survive, but I still need my sanity, you know, then they are called the middle road. And then those who are outright saying, I don't want this part of your system. You don't get funding, you don't get acknowledgement, your own people don't come to your Zoom chats. They don't, because, hey, I don't want to be told that I need to stop being a buffoon. I don't want to be told that I'm supposed to stop being a sellout. So we understand. And my brother, I don't believe as Africans we must go against each other. Remember, it's about survival. Remember, tomorrow, June 16, was about some young people. All they did was walk on the street and say, but we have our language. We don't need Afrikaans. We don't need your language. Keep your language. And just for that, wanting to have their own language, the guns came out and they were killed. Yes. So a mother who loves their children, my brother, would not want to see their black child go in front and start toying. Because history tells us that when you put your neck off, they don't even have to chop it off for you. The sellouts will chop it off for you. The men and women will stab you in the back just so that you don't destroy the apricot. So,
yes.
so what I'm saying to you, my brother, is that because we are aware of this, the task at hand for us, and I think one of your questions you sent me is, what should we do as individuals to make sure we take back?
Yes.
The first thing every individual which was taught to us, we were taught in the book of the Coming Forth by Day. It taught us the first law of Ma'at, man, know thyself.
Know thyself,
So,
yes.
know thyself. So the first lesson, the first work you have to do is knowledge of self. What am I about? What is my purpose? My purpose of being. What is my agency? What have I chosen that will liberate myself, my children, my family, my group? If you decide on your agency, whether it is you're going to be a media person, then make sure in your media work, you do something that will show people that you are doing it for the purpose of the liberation of your people. I decided, my brother, almost 30 years now, that I only wore African clothes. I will not wear anything else that's not made by an African. I will never, ever do it. So even in my happy moments, I still remember that my agency is to support African people who make things, because I want to show them that I am proud of the hands and I want to give them value. So my agency is education and African things that are made by African. Now those two things become your purpose and you live it, you work it, then people don't believe that you're schizophrenic, my brother. Once we know what your agency is, then when you get to the last point of your life, you will meet a feather, and the feather will be put on a scale, and that scale will have your heart. One side of the scale will have your heart, and at the time of transition, you will be asked, did you fulfill your purpose that you had been given? Now, you can't get there and say you never knew what your purpose was. Because spiritually, as Africans, we know that by our names, by our grandparents' character, by the values that we are taught, we are given some kind of purpose. So the feather must be as light as our heart when we get there. So choose your agency. And when you choose your agency, sometimes you won't be getting any money for it. Sometimes there'll be no recognition for it. Sometimes there is no one to account to for it. But if you know and you believe in your spirit as an African, that this is what the agency that has been given to you to do, then you say in the Nguni language, no makanjani, no matter what. You must get to that last day where the feather and your heart will be balanced. So you come over to the transition to become the ancestor word calling on.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I love the way you have put it, Mama. Yeah, that one important thing is for us to know ourselves, what we're here for, We have talked a lot of things, talking about the African agenda, talking about what is terribly wrong with Africa. Now, the call is upon us. It's upon us to say, what do we do with the information that we have so far? It's not everything, and I wish we can go on. And I'm being reminded that Instagram have a time limit and all that. Yes. So we need to wrap up here. Mamaya, thank you very much. And
I just want to close, my brother, with this.
Yes.
African scholars, African indigenous people.
We have 24 seconds, so just remember quick.
African people must pursue knowledge production that can renovate African culture and defend the African people's dignity. Africology without apology.
Africology without apology. Everybody arise and Africa arise. We need to do something bring about